Good morning, all, and welcome to the viewing and listening audience to the 6th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration. Welcome also to the observers in the viewing gallery. This committee has oversight responsibility for education, health, gender, tourism, public administration, labor, culture, community development, and other social services. This is the committee's first public hearing and with stakeholders pursuant to its inquiry into youth unemployment and underemployment in Trinidad and Tobago. This inquiry seeks to examine the persistent challenges affecting young people's transition into sustainable employment, including the mismatch between education and labor market demands, barriers to workforce participation, and the effectiveness of existing policies, programs, and institutional frameworks. Members of the public are invited to submit their comments on the Parliament's social media platforms, YouTube channel ParlView, or via Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at TT-PARL Committees for real-time updates and highlights from committee meetings. I would now like to facilitate the introduction of representatives from the various bodies present, starting with, please, the Ministry of Labour, Small and Micro Enterprise Development.
Morning, Chair and members. I am Natalie Willis, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labour, Small and Micro Enterprise Development. I will ask my colleagues who accompany me to introduce themselves, starting with the Acting Chief Manpower Officer.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Monique Abraham, Acting Chief Manpower Officer of the Ministry of Labour, Small and Micro Enterprise Development.
Good morning, Chair and members. I am Dr. Justin Joseph, Labour Market Specialist.
Thank you. And I see you already know that there's a button to press when you're speaking to activate the mic, and then please disengage after you finish speaking. Thank you. So some of you are familiar with that. Can we go now to the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training? I think you're known as MTest.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Ravi Ratiram, Permanent Secretary Acting, Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. I now invite my team, starting first with DPS, to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chair and the committee. My name is Bhagwati Manik. I'm Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Lisa Madray-Valadere, Acting Director, Research, Planning and Technical Services Division of Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training.
Thank you. The OJT team.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Joanne David, and I am currently the Director of the On-the-Job Training Division.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am Joanna White-Labari, Coordinator of Training Development underneath the On-the-Job Training Division.
Thank you. NEDCO.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Ken Lacken. I'm the Chairman of NEDCO.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Danny Murad, Chief Executive Officer.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Colin Providence, Senior Business Incubation Officer at NEDCO.
Thank you. The National Training Agency.
Morning, Chair, everybody. My name is Chandar Gupta Supasad, Chairman of National Training Agency, and the other person will introduce.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am Patrice Barris-Searles, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Training Agency.
Thank you. MIC, Institute of Technology.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, and all present today. My name is Anil Ramnarayan, the Chief Executive Officer of MIC Institute of Technology. I'll hand you over to my colleague.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Good morning. My name is Nathan Langain, the General Manager of the Training Division at MIC Institute of Technology.
Thank you. And the Youth Training and Employment Partnership Program, YTEP.
Pleasant morning, Madam Chairman and members. I am Montgomery Guy, the Acting Chief Executive Officer of YTEP Limited. I would give way to my YTEP colleagues to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and the rest of the committee. Keon Stevenson, Director Operations at YTEP Limited.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Pradesh Ramsamir, Acting Director, Entrepreneurial Development and Support Services, YTEP Limited.
Okay, thanks everyone. I'd now like to invite members of the committee to introduce ourselves. I am Senator Dr. Desiree Murray. I'm chairman of the committee. And to my left, starting with Member Ratiram.
Dowlath.
Minister Dowlath first.
Sorry, Minister Dowlath.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Dowlath, member.
Good morning, everyone. Ravi Ratiram, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Melanie Roberts-Radgman, member. Thank you for taking the time this morning.
Good morning, David Nakhid, member.
Good morning, I'm Khadijah. Ameen, Vice Chairman of this committee.
Okay, thanks for that. And apologies, Minister Dowlath. I was coming anti-clockwise, and I think everybody else was going clockwise, so sorry about that. So, just a few house rules. I'd just like to remind committee members and officials to direct their questions and concerns through the chair. I've already explained about activating the microphone on your devices, and I'd just like to outline the inquiry objectives before we proceed. The objectives are: 1, to identify key factors and conditions that are contributing to youth unemployment and underemployment in Trinidad and Tobago. 2, to assess the effectiveness of existing state policies, programs, and initiatives in reducing youth unemployment and underemployment rates. And 3, to examine the real and potential contribution of the private sector in facilitating higher labor force participation by young persons. I'd like now to please invite the entities present to give some brief opening remarks, and in the interest of time, could we restrict please to 1 minute, starting with the Ministry of Labour, Small and Micro Enterprise Development.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. We at the Ministry of Labour, Small and Micro Enterprise Development are grateful for the opportunity to meet with the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration for this inquiry into youth unemployment and underemployment in Trinidad and Tobago. Based on data from the Central Statistical Office, it is clear that youth unemployment continues to be a considerable challenge, as it has remained significantly above that of the national unemployment rate. We recognize youth employment as a significant priority reflected in the government's official policy framework, which places strong emphasis on youth development, including youth employment, skills, and entrepreneurship. In this regard, one of our key initiatives include the National Employment Service, which provides job matching support and career guidance to job seekers, including youth, as they prepare to enter the labor market. Working in partnership with schools, communities, and faith-based organizations, and various ministries and agencies, the NES also conducts World of Work seminars that equip participants with professional resume writing skills, interview techniques, and other key information to assist these persons. The ministry also identifies the need for timely data to inform policy, and it is with this in mind that ongoing work is being undertaken to build our labor market information system. The data provided through the LMIS will inform the basis for evidence-based policy interventions to address the challenges associated with youth unemployment and underemployment in Trinidad and Tobago. The ministry therefore welcomes the opportunity to contribute to the committee's deliberations with the intention of making progress to identify practical solutions, break down barriers, and strengthen key partnerships to advance meaningful outcomes for the youth of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Thank you. Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. Brief opening remarks, please.
Madam Chairman, members of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration, administrative and technical officers, and members of the viewing public, a pleasant good morning. On behalf of the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, I wish to express sincere appreciation for the opportunity to contribute to this inquiry into youth unemployment and underemployment in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Chairman, youth unemployment and underemployment present complex challenges which require coordinated and forward-looking responses. In this regard, the Ministry and its institutions remain strategically positioned to play a central role in enhancing employability, advancing workforce readiness, and driving productivity amongst our youth in alignment with the Strategic National Development Plan for Trinidad and Tobago 2026 to 2030. Within this context, the Ministry recognizes its strategic role of higher education as a key enabler of economic transformation, innovation, and sustainable development. As such, the tertiary education and skills training sector serves as a critical mechanism for human capital development, facilitating the transition of individuals into productive economic participation and supporting the achievement of broader national development outcomes. Our vision for the sector is to build a globally competitive and inclusive system that actively contributes to national development and economic growth. Central to this vision is the development of a robust pipeline of skilled professionals and innovators equipped to respond to evolving national and global demands. We will continue to work closely with our agencies and also MDAs as we advance a coordinated whole-of-government approach to service delivery. We thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for those remarks. The National Entrepreneurship Development Company, NEDCO.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable members. NEDCO acknowledges the importance of a financing function in support entrepreneurship and reducing youth unemployment. Sorry about that. Madam Chair, honorable members, NEDCO acknowledges the importance of its financing function in support of entrepreneurship and reducing unemployment and facilitating small business development in Trinidad and Tobago. NEDCO is a state enterprise whose public role is to support micro and small enterprises sectors through loans, training, entrepreneurship, and now we are focused on the unemployment and underemployment situation in Trinidad.
Thank you. I'll now invite the National Training Agency to make brief opening remarks.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. The NTA is the designated external quality assurance body for TVET, Technical Vocational Education and Training in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a non-profit company under the Companies Act and operates under a mandate to promote, facilitate, and maintain quality within the national TVET system through the development and implementation of standards, assessment frameworks, and quality assurance mechanisms aligned to national and Caribbean vocational qualification systems. In this capacity, the NTA is responsible for coordination, harmonization, and quality assurance of TVET provision with the objective of supporting a certified, competent, and globally competitive workforce. It is important to clarify that the NTA functions as a standard-setting and external quality assurance body rather than an implementing or enforcement agency. Accordingly, its influence on youth employment and unemployment outcomes is primarily indirect and system level, and depends on broader policy coherence, institutional coordination, and the effectiveness of implementing agencies within the education and labor market ecosystem. The agency does not possess statutory enforcement authority or cabinet-directed powers of execution. As such, we fulfill our mandate through technical leadership, moral suasion, institutional collaboration, and sustained engagement with training providers, employers, and sector stakeholders. Within the broader national context, the agency operates alongside other institutions, such as the Labor Market Information Unit within the Ministry of Labor, which is mandated to collect and analyze labor market data. The NTA functions as a part of a wider ecosystem supporting workforce development and skills alignment. Thank you very much, and we are pleased to be here.
And thank you for those comments. The MIC Institute of Technology, please.
Good morning, Chair and members. MIC thanks the committee for this opportunity. The philosophy of MIC is training for industry. MIC has been in the business of tech work training since 1974 to support the manufacturing sector, and since expanded training offerings to support the construction and hospitality sectors. Because of the areas of studies offered, some trainees benefit from other opportunities, particularly in the energy sector. It is noteworthy that we make mention that MIC has graduated over 30,000 students to date. MIC is unique from the perspective that we, in addition to training, we have a plastics manufacturing plant and an advanced machine workshop for which students, while they train, they have an opportunity to be part of that real-world work experience. And at the same time, some would get opportunities in internship at our external industry partner sites. Our training is to ensure trainees are prepared for the world of work as far as reasonably possible, thereby assisting them seeking employment after program completion. All of this being said, all our efforts are geared towards addressing the issue of unemployment and underemployment, for which we have been doing with pride for over 5 decades. We thank you.
Thank you. And finally, the Youth Training and Employment Partnership Program Limited, YTEP Limited.
Pleasant morning, Madam Chairman, members of this distinguished Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration. It is our pleasure and duty to serve as witnesses here at this inquiry to provide relevant information that would guide today's deliberation, as well as serve to inform overarching policies that would address the issue of youth unemployment and underemployment. YTEP Limited targets youth between the ages of 15 and 35 years, retrenched and displaced workers between 25 and 60 years, and incarcerated persons between the ages of 18 and 50 years. Our core business is vocational skills training. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those remarks. Now, I'd just like to point out that there are 7 entities present and 18 witnesses. So in order to have a structured approach to the hearing this morning, I'd like to suggest that we divide the session into 2 parts. The first hour or so, we'd like to field questions to the Ministry of Labor, Small and Micro Enterprises, and to the National Entrepreneurship Development Company Limited, NETCO, because they fall under the remit of the Ministry of Labor, and focus our attention there. And then for the second half of the hearing, we'd like to pose questions to the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training and all the training entities that fall under them, including or focusing our attention on the on-the-job training program. So I trust that that is acceptable to everyone present and that we can proceed, starting with the Ministry of Labor, Small and Micro Enterprise Development. So I will commence my question, please, to the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Natalie Willis. Ms. Willis, this inquiry is on youth unemployment and underemployment. So to ensure that we're all on the same page going forward, could you please define for me 3 terms: youth, unemployment, and underemployment, because those terms mean different things to different people. So we just want to be sure that everyone is referring to the same thing when we use those terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I will ask my labor market specialist, who has responsibility for measuring these terms, to tell us what they mean.
Hi, good morning once again. I will first begin with youth. There are different definitions for youth based on age group. The United Nations define youth as between the ages of 15 and 24, and the ILO between the ages 15 to 29, because the ILO is interested in the transition from education to employment. And Trinidad and Tobago, based on the recent or the last youth policy, the age group is between 16 and 34. And to define employment, employment refers to persons in the labor market who are actively searching for jobs. So persons, I will repeat that. Employment are persons who are employed in the labor market, engaged in some form of economic activities. And underemployment, we can look at it from 2 different angles. The first is time-related underemployment. That is persons who are working for fewer than 40 hours per week, but are willing to work additional hours. And there's also underemployment in terms of persons who are overqualified for the job they are currently working at.
Thank you. Could you explain?
And Chair, if I may add, that the minimum age for employment in Trinidad and Tobago is 16 years.
Yes, thank you. So if I may ask, could you explain then the difference between part-time employment and underemployment, or are they the same thing?
There are similar concepts. Part-time employment will be working for less than 40 hours, whereas underemployment, well, the time-related underemployment, in order to be considered underemployment, you have to be working for less than 40 hours, but you should be willing to work additional hours.
Thank you. So how does that relate to the concept of job sharing and job pairing?
Job sharing and job pairing?
Where you have 2 people employed but sharing one position. Is that considered unemployment, underemployment?
2 persons are employed but sharing one position.
Yes.
So they are performing the same task or similar task?
Same tasks but shared in one position. So for example, somebody may work 1 week on, 1 week off, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the other one work Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday.
Right, so once it's under 40 hours per week, and the persons are willing to work additional hours, it will be considered underemployment.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Dowlath, did you want to ask about skills mismatch?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Chair. Ministry of Labor, in your submission, you would have indicated that there's often a misalignment between the skills possessed by young job seekers and those demanded by employers, particularly in emerging and technical fields. So the question I have is this: could you give specific examples of those emerging and technical fields in which this mismatch is most prevalent? And secondly, what strategies are being considered by the ministry to address and resolve this particular issue of mismatch?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Member. I will ask the Labour Market Specialist to respond.
Thank you, True Chair. I would like to indicate that the Ministry of Labour has not done any research on skills mismatch. However, based on secondary information or information gathered from this research, it suggests that emerging sectors that are such as the green economy or the blue economy, there are sectors that young persons are not trained in, but they are willing to enter those sectors. So this is based on research we have. The Ministry of Labour has not done primary research, but based on secondary research, we were able to gather this information. What the Ministry of Labour is doing to address the situation, as the Permanent Secretary would have mentioned in the introduction, the Labour Market Information Unit is currently working on establishing a Labour Market Information System. With this system, it will bring data from different sources into one platform. So researchers and other stakeholders will have access to data to make evidence-based decisions. The Ministry of Labour has also conducted in the past a number of job vacancy surveys to understand what are the needs of the labour market. Based on this information, researchers or the educational sectors can use this information to align the programs that are offered so that the needs of the labour market can be aligned to the qualifications that that persons have within the economy. Basically, it's matching demand for labor with supply for labor. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, just for the benefit of the viewing audience, you mentioned some colors of the economy, blue and green, I think you said. Could you just explain those terms?
Right. So the green economy basically suggests that the non-energy jobs that will create will sustain the environment. So those are green jobs, and they are different with the blue jobs. I can't recall the blue jobs, but they are orange in terms of the cultural industry. So there are different colors that will align to different types of jobs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Blue is coastal. Chair, just to add, so when you speak to the blue economy, you're talking more in terms of fishing industry, anything with the ocean, right? So, thank you.
Excellent. I understand the color code now. It makes sense. Thank you. Dr. Dowlath?
Chair, so through you, I wanted to ask, so what's the latest labor market study that the ministry would have? Because later on in your submissions, you indicated that many young people possess academic qualifications that are not aligned with current labor market demands. So I'm assuming that you have some study somewhere that says that. And this may be one of the factors contributing to underemployment, which is what the chair would have asked at the beginning. So what's your current labor market study? What's the most recent one?
Thank you for your question, Chair, through you. the Labor Market Information Unit would have conducted a number of surveys, job vacancy surveys. There were surveys in terms of the private sector and state agencies, also within the civil service. So these surveys will have gathered data on a number of variables, not just job vacancies. It includes variables such as hard-to-fill vacancies, that is vacancies that organization would have advertised vacancies to fill those jobs but were unable to find qualified persons for those jobs. It also includes skills needs, soft skills. There were a number of variables that those job vacancy surveys would have collected. So that data will be used to understand the demand side for labor in Trinidad and Tobago.
Chair, I don't think we got a definite date, what year, so that, because if you are looking at a mismatch with the present graduates from the education system and they're not aligned with how old is the data in terms of, and that's something that's important. You need current labor market data to ensure that our graduates from secondary and tertiary institutions can be alerted to what are the skill sets that are required for employability. And I think we need to tag down to exactly how current this data is.
Through you, Chair, the service would have been conducted a while ago, and the civil service would have been done in which the surveys initially were to establish a baseline. So the civil service job vacancy survey would have been done in December 2020. The private sector and state agency survey, that would have been completed either 22 or 23. I can't recall the exact year, but subsequent to those surveys, the Labor Market Information Unit would be conducting quarterly surveys. So with the intention of always having relevant data available. The labor market specialist could indicate what is the latest quarterly survey that would have been conducted.
So thank you, PS. Chair, through you once again. The Labor Market Information conducted quarterly survey, as PS would have indicated. The most recent quarterly survey is for the period January to March 2024. Currently, we are embarking on an additional survey. We are looking right now at January to March 2025. It is expected that it will be ongoing, so every year surveys will be conducted to understand the needs of the labor market.
Thank you. Minister Ameen, did you want to ask about barriers?
Yes. Right. So one of the things that you speak about is in terms of access to rural communities in your submission. And you indicate that your program is available and accessible to all persons with required academic and skills qualification. And based on what you indicated your requirements are, there are still some vulnerable youth categories that I have some concerns with. One is the young people who live in very rural communities, because we still have many students who, let's take an area like Matlot and so on, they rent in the more populated areas because that's where the jobs are. And I want to know what initiatives you have, or have you considered initiatives to allow for training opportunities and job creation in those rural communities so that those young persons will not have that excessive commute or the need to rent to live closer to their job and then go home on weekends, or in fact, some of them have to completely leave home. And areas that I've personally encountered people with those issues would include areas like Matlot, Rio Claro, Beach, Guayari, Lafayette, and so on. And the second area has to do with persons with disabilities, young persons with disabilities. Do you have a specific target or a way of ensuring that persons with disabilities have an equal opportunity on this program?
So to answer the second question before the first one, our programs don't discriminate, so it's open to everyone, including persons with disabilities. In terms of the ministry, we have established an internal working committee seeking to find greater mechanisms for greater inclusion of persons with disabilities in the workplace. So we work, this committee comprises several units within the ministry. We also collaborate with the Ministry of the People and Social Development and Family Services, who has responsibility for this group of vulnerable persons, as well as we're working actually with the Trinidad and Tobago Blind and Welfare Association. And next week, we are launching training for 18 visually impaired or blind persons in terms of starting your business idea. So that training will take place. We have had all our materials translated into Braille thanks to NALIS. And we have persons who have been trained by the ILO in our Enterprise Development Division who will be conducting the sessions with those persons with the intent that they will be able to eventually, if they are interested, start their business or generate a business idea. We can also, in that sense, collaborate, because NEDCO is under us, collaborate with NEDCO in terms of further strengthening the business idea or in terms of mentoring those persons if their business is established.
All right. And with regards to persons in rural communities?
What tends to happen, the ministry does not go out and seek, but we get plenty requests from either the Ministry of Community, Culture and Community Development, who would have many outreaches in these far communities, and they always invite the Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise Development to be part of their outreach activities.
Right. All right. So, Madam PS, what I know the opportunities are available for everyone in Trinidad and Tobago, but it means that people in rural communities have to jump several hurdles before they get to that same destination. And in the last few years, many of the campuses and training facilities under MTest were discontinued or temporarily closed. So if you think about NESC and others in some of those far-off areas that I mentioned that were in South Trinidad and the rural areas, very rural areas, they were closed. And one of the reasons, because I'd been asking, one of the reasons given is that the number of trainees was too small. It wasn't sustainable. And in those areas, of course, you have less people training.
Yeah.
But it means that those who are willing now have to jump through so many hoops. And I am asking if any consideration is given for, even though it might cost more per employee, to continue to provide those services. Because NESC, I mean, I don't want to go into the numbers, but under the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, several of these entities who are responsible for training have been closing down campuses left, right, and center, to the point where it is only in the densely populated areas that training opportunities are available. And I could call a list of NESC and MIT and other facilities that have been closed, shut down, and those buildings are still there. Does the ministry have plans, or would you be willing to take into consideration reopening those centers so that everyone in Trinidad will have more of an equal opportunity to get there. Of course, the opportunities are there, but it's not as close and practical for everyone with the closure of those few entities over the last couple of years. So the question is, would those boards be, would consideration be given for those campuses where tertiary skills training institutes, where those campuses have been closed over the past few years, for them to be reopened so more students will have access?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think she's asking about economies of scale and whether they are sustainable. So I'm not sure if that's a question. Maybe the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training would want to field that question.
Madam Chair, through you, I would direct that question to DPS Manik, please.
Perhaps the institution chair would probably want to answer directly, because they would have an idea based on their surveys and data collected, and their plans on the way forward.
Now, Madam Chair, I recognize that these boards are newly appointed and they may not have had the opportunity to put forward their plan, their strategic plan and so on, but it is something that I would like the PS to be mindful of and perhaps provide the data to those boards with regards to which campuses were closed so that they can look at the feasibility of restoring them to.
Noted.
Okay, thank you so much. Member Roberts-Radgman, I think you wanted to ask something similarly about female workers.
Yes, please, Chair. And I would also kind of mirror the concern that Minister Ameen would have shared with regards to not so much the training, but access to employment for persons living in rural communities and also young persons living with disabilities. And in the ministry submission, they would have indicated a discrepancy, a disparity in terms of almost like a disadvantage to female employees in terms of them being able to obtain employment. So my question, grouping those female employees as well, or female young persons seeking employment, so grouping those with persons living in rural communities and also young persons living with disabilities, what sort of plans, I guess, or targeted interventions does the ministry have in play right now to ensure that there's labor market participation among these groups? And to tag on to that, has any consideration been given to things like alternative working patterns, maybe remote working, hybrid working that may be able to reach these groups? So your young females, your persons living in your rural communities, and your disabled persons.
Thank you for that question. I'll ask the labor market specialist, Dr. Joseph, to respond.
To you, Chair. Member, just to answer your question with respect to labor market participation of persons living with disabilities and females, the labor market information is currently doing a thorough examination of the factors that are influencing the decline in the labor market participation rate. That will include females, persons of different age group, young persons, persons with disabilities, so it will include the entire labor force. So coming out from this study, there will be recommendations as to different interventions that can be implemented to address the decline in labor force participation rate. Just to indicate, the current labor force participation rate for females in Trinidad and Tobago is under 50%. So that is very worrying. That is one of the major labor market issues that we are facing.
Chair, through you, a follow-up for Dr. Joseph. Thank you, Dr. Joseph. So you mentioned in particular the participation rate for young females, and I see that you would have identified concerns such as housekeeping and I guess the responsibilities that young females have. So based on the information you have before you at this particular time, What considerations has the ministry given right now to address that while you're waiting for the outcome of the bigger studies?
Right, so currently, with respect to the factors, those factors are factors that, those are reasons why persons are not in the labor market, right? Because they will have different housekeeping responsibilities and so forth. So currently, the ministry has not implemented any programs per se, but through the NES and different agencies within under the ministry, they reach out to persons in different parts of the country so they will have access to different resources, and that could help with those persons entering the labor force.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about those persons who are now entering the labor market, who can sometimes be described as Gen Z. Gen Z is born between 1997 and 2012, so they would be ages 14 to 29 years. In your submission, you stated that employers consistently identified gaps in communication, professionalism, punctuality, teamwork, problem solving, adaptability, and general workplace conduct as critical weaknesses among job seekers, particularly recent graduates. Could you indicate whether employers have made any recommendations to address these short soft skills deficits? And do you agree that to some extent these complaints that are concerning behavioral and professional development skills can be mainly gained through lived work experience?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So those soft skills that are required in the job market, well, just to indicate, through the job vacancy surveys, employers will have indicated a number of soft skills that are required for the jobs in their institutions. However, they would have indicated that those soft skills could be acquired over time through their term of employment within the organization. For example, a number of employers would have spoken about mentorship within the organization to train younger persons in various skills that are required to perform efficiently in the job. So those were the main findings from that job vacancy survey, including mentorship, and also employers would have mentioned transferring of knowledge, tacit knowledge, and explicit knowledge within the job, that is older persons could create a forum where younger persons are entering the job market could understand the various soft skills that are required for the job, and so doing, they will be able to perform their task more efficiently. With respect to the younger persons in the secondary school system, there were also recommendations for the school system to also cater for those type of skills. Thank you.
Chair, one of the biggest concerns and complaints about participants on many training programs is that after they have an expectation of job placement, even with OJT, they are often pleading with the employer to keep them in the employ of that agency. And my question to you is, what role does the ministry play in terms of job placement for applicants who successfully complete training programs? Do you have a system where you assess them, for instance, and say those who perform well, or do you rate them? And because if you can't perhaps employ all, do you have a system to select some? But what is your policy on employment or facilitating employment of trainees? Because it gets very frustrating for young people. Some of them are in one training program after another. They complete OJT, they know they can't go back there, they go on another program, but what they really want is employment. So what is your policy to facilitate trainees?
Through you, Chair, thank you for that question. How to say it? At this time, the ministry does not have a national employment policy. We recognize that there is need for such a policy, which will, of course, a youth employment policy would be a component of the larger employment policy. We have started having discussions with the International Labour Organization with regard to the development of such a policy. With regard to job placement, the National Employment Service, which receives its mandate from the Employment Exchange Act, which directs that there should be employment exchanges throughout the country. So the Ministry of Labor has a number of offices located throughout Trinidad and one in Tobago, where persons seeking employment can come and register that they are looking for employment. We also ask employers to post their vacancies with the National Employment Service. And in that regard, the ministry, through its manpower division and its National Employment Service unit, will seek to match those job seekers with the relevant vacancies posted by employers. My chief manpower officer, who has responsibility for that, the National Employment Service, can speak further to this, and I'll ask her to contribute.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Through you, Chair, the National Employment Service is the government's free public service where persons can register, job seekers can register for employment, and employers can also post their vacancies, as our PS has said. When persons come in, they are interviewed by manpower officers, and we would collect their documents, compare originals with copies and so on, and match persons with vacancies that we have. Under the purview of the Ministry of Labor, there are some programs. So, for instance, some ministries may have short-term requests for short-term employment, and the ministry would go through its database of persons, check the job descriptions, and ensure that the persons would meet the relevant criteria. Sometimes we are asked to forward resumes to the departments or ministries. Sometimes we are asked to send persons directly. And that's how we assist with the employment. And they would go for it's short term, maybe a period of 3 months in the first instance.
Chair, just allow me. I understand what you are sharing with us is how you share recruit opportunities, employment opportunities, and that is open to the public. I am asking if you have considerations for your trainees specifically to help transition them into opportunities, because this sounds like it's open to the public, which is good.
Right. If I may respond, in terms of the trainees under the ministry, our specific ministry, in most instances, they continue into employment under the ministry, because we recognize whether it's through the OJT program, whether they come through some other avenue into the ministry, and we, through whatever training, mentorship that is given to them, over the period of time we recognize we need to keep them. So they tend to transition right now either to short-term or fixed-term employment.
Right, but that's a very small number.
Because speaking to our ministry, I cannot say what other ministries do.
All right,
in
well,
terms
there
of
must be a nexus between the Ministry of Labor and the ministry responsible for all the skills training in the country. Because certainly these organizations can't be churning out trainees in a vacuum. There must be some connection to the labor market, and I would have thought it may have been you, where your policies would facilitate our trainees getting into jobs. The whole petroleum sector shut down. All these people MIC used to be training have nowhere to go. I mean, where are we putting them? Is the Ministry of Labor informing the Ministry of responsible for training what areas we should have training in? And then when these trainees graduate, are you facilitating or guiding them to the places that have the jobs? So that's kind of what I was getting at, rather than, I know you advertise jobs, that's fantastic, but I'm speaking about connecting the needs of the job market to the training that's taken place and linking the trainees back into meaningful, sustainable jobs. So is there that nexus between the two ministries, or is something that a policy directive would have to cure?
I will ask my labor market specialist to speak a little on this, and then I will come in if necessary.
Chair, through you, I believe everyone here will agree when I say that it's important to have data to make evidence-based decisions. So the Labor Market Information Unit, as I would have mentioned earlier, is working on establishing the Labor Market Information System. This system, once operationalized, will provide data to make evidence-based decisions. One of the main issues that we are looking at is the alignment between the demand for labor and the supply for labor. Once this system is operationalized, as I indicated, a number of labor market issues can be resolved through having data to make those decisions. Thank you.
Chair, in synergy with what Minister Ameen said, I know you're into looking to get the data, necessary data. Surely one of the things you would look at is what is the percentage success rate to match those OJTs into jobs. That's what you're looking at for sure? To know what is the success rate of matching your OJTs to the jobs that are available.
Right.
So we have an idea of how many OJTs are left out of the system. Correct?
You're correct. But to add to that, one of the main issues in our labor market is skills mismatch. So many times you may realize that the OJTs, based on a qualification, it may not have jobs in the labor market to suit their qualifications. So they may not find jobs, so there will not be an easy transition.
Hold up. One step at a time. I would think that you have an OJT system that would be geared towards the jobs that are accessible. So you want them, that's the logical pathway. You have an OJT system and you have a certain accessibility into a job market. Don't tell me that we are training OJTs and at the end of the day we don't have jobs for them. I mean, I can understand there might be more of a supply than there is demand. I can understand that. But it cannot be of such a nature where we have so many OJTs who I see within my own ministry come in and there's nothing for them. And then they have to go to somewhere else and they have to go into another, go down from their qualifications. So the question is, I mean, the same question posed to you earlier, what Minister Ameen said, how quickly can we connect those OJTs into jobs that give them certifiable employment, meaningful employment? Something to take on board, Minister of Labor, as quickly as possible.
So thank you for that. I think that is one of the studies we can implement as soon as possible to understand the linkage between the OJT program and the labor market. Thank you.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick observation to be able to connect the contributions of Dr. Dowlath and then Minister Ameen and Senator Nakhid. So I believe what needs to happen, and one of the recommendations that would probably come out from the committee, and Dr. Joseph, this probably means that you have quite a bit of work on your hands, is to connect from the market needs so that from the training and education level, from tertiary level, we understand what, I guess, students need to be focusing their attention on, and then you link that to the training programs themselves. So they're educated, and then they're trained, and then you funnel them. So there needs to be some nexus between the Ministry of Labor, after these students have been trained according to the specific market needs, where they are then fed into the employment pipeline. So it's I guess a three-way connection that needs to happen if we really want to address the issue of the unemployment and underemployment.
And if I may remember, that is the intention of having the labor market information system and conducting all the job vacancy surveys to find out the demand side so that we can inform. The intent is to inform the Ministry of Education in terms of what are the demands out there in the job market so that they can tailor their programs to suit, right? So that is the intention.
Thank you. And then on one final note, I have here that you mentioned your NEON platform. So it says that you want to use data collected from registrations, vacancies, and employment outcomes, and the National Employment Service will then be able to generate labor market insights. So my question is, what training or digital literacy support will be provided to young job seekers who may struggle to navigate the online component of this system?
The NEON, which stands for National Employment Online Network, more or less digitalizes what has been done by the Manpower Division over a number of years. So it means that persons who come in to register will not have to physically do so. There may still be persons who will need to come in, and in that sense, in terms of if they do, we do have systems set up, computer desktop set up at the office, and officers will sit with them and go through with them how to register online. But the intention is really to digitalize the process of registering with the ministry, and as well as employers themselves will also post their vacancies. And the thing is that what is built in, there is some AI built into what we are building so that that job matching will take place very quickly. And persons will be able to track if I've registered for a job, if I applied for a job, where it is in the system. They can continuously track the progress of their application.
So what's the current status of that platform?
It has been built out. It has been tested for security through the Ministry of National Security. Their CSIRT would have looked at what we have developed, and we would want to demo it to employers before we do the official launch of it. But it is intended to be launched in this fiscal.
Thank you. We look forward to that because it should certainly help with the mismatch that we've been speaking about.
Yes.
If I could move on to NEDCO, I believe that Dr. Dowlath wanted to ask about entrepreneurial training.
Thank you very much, Chair, to the chairman or members of NEDCO. In your submissions, you indicated that you conducted surveys every 2 years with respect to measuring job creation revenue growth and business continuity. So my question to you is this. How are these surveys administered, and what is involved in administering these surveys? And from the data you would have collected, how many entrepreneurs would have closed down their businesses in the last 3 years? And especially the percentage of discontinued businesses in that age group, 18 to 35 or 18 to 34.
I will direct this question to my incubation officer.
Hi, good morning again. Chair, through you. Just to answer the last part of the question first, we don't have data with respect to the number of young persons who would have closed their businesses over the period of time. The surveys would not have examined those particular areas. But that is something that, of course, we can take note of and in future look at providing that type of information. But currently, the service did not capture that data.
Can you indicate when was your last survey?
Again, Chair, through you. Our last survey with respect to understanding the needs of the entrepreneurs would have been done sometime last year. I don't have the exact date, but again, we could provide that information to you after this hearing.
Yes, on the data from it, the results of it.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, from your experience, what are the main reasons young people seeking business financing are denied approvals? Do you assist young applicants in preparing the required documentation for business financing?
Madam Chair, I think our Chief Senior Business Incubation Officer will be well positioned to answer this question.
Yeah, again, through you, Chair. If you could just repeat the question for me so that I have it.
I was wondering what the main reasons for young people seeking business financing for denial of their approvals, and if you assist young applicants in preparing the required documentation for business financing.
Right. Some of the main reasons that we find for young persons is really lack of collateral. Most persons who enter don't meet the criteria or don't have the required collateral that is requested for loans. And so in terms of preparing persons, what NEDCO does is really undergo a review of their business model and steer them in the direction in terms of what resources they may need in terms of not just the collateral, but also in terms of the skills that are required for them to apply for business financing. Because what we find is a lot of persons are interested in starting businesses, but they may lack certain competencies and skills that NEDCO would provide through our training. So this is one of the areas where we identify the gap and try to address it through the training services that we have.
Excuse me. What collateral can we expect someone from Laventille or Beetham or Sealots to have in order to access a loan? Somebody ambitious, qualified. What collateral can we expect them to have? So you're starting at a historical disadvantage for people from Laventille? For people from Mova? People from Mondo? How are we going to address this?
Well, again, Chair, through you, again, this is one of the areas that NEDCO has been looking at and trying to find answers. And it's not just for persons in maybe depressed areas, but it's across, we find it across Trinidad and Tobago. Persons, especially young persons, lack collateral, lack access to it. And yes, more so, Senator, to your point, more so in the depressed areas. And so what we've been looking at are different types of interventions, including our incubation services, where we try to train the persons, get them the skills that they needed, and really do micro breakdown with respect to where we can provide small loans to get them started, and do a review, and then look at where we could fund maybe a larger amount as they progress with their business.
Just to continue, based on what you just said, I mean, if you take a quick glance at the global economy and how sometimes these things are done, where people do not have, young men especially, and women, do not have access to collateral, they implement a certain kind of work-it-off model where they have to give back, or they have to work with the government or with the state or with an enterprise, a state enterprise, anything, in order to work off that. Nobody's going to have access to collateral that we can give them a sizable finance to have any meaningful kind of business. It's going to be very, very difficult. You know, you all know the survey just on the ground. I can tell you that it's not going to happen. So only certain people will have access to these loans.
Sure.
I mean, we have to adjust these things immediately, given the environment that we have, and it's an incendiary environment in these depressed areas.
Chair. And if I may add, some of them don't even have bank accounts. Many people don't have bank accounts to build their credit rating, so they're in a very vulnerable position. And I also wanted to note that your submission says that loans to females is less than to males, and why do you think that is?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to add a little more information to the conversation. Senator, totally agree with your point. We have a new board of directors. I'm also recently installed a couple of months ago as the chief executive officer of the organization. And we understand that the organization is in need of serious change. And we are doing significant reviews in alignment to ensure that we pursue the agenda in a manner that we actually are real and practical on the ground with transforming the lives of people generally, and specifically it will also impact the youth demographic. To go further, in the context of what you have been describing there, we have already begun to conceptualize programs. One of these programs is the involvement of the private sector, and where we are in current discussions with representatives of areas, and they have persons, and especially young people, coming forward and say, listen, I want to do something positive. I want to start a business. I want to have an opportunity. NETCO has now engaged in a manner where to intervene through our training mechanism. We have the people, the young people that are there, and we are, through the partnership, now integrating corporate involvement from a financing perspective, and we bring the parties together, and they will go through a training from NETCO officers. So they may be at different stages of the game. Some may have an idea or inclination, and we will move those individuals into that group into developing a business plan. There may be someone who has something going but need to get formalized, and they need to get some seed funding. And through where they're at, we're going to really lobby the private sector to bring finance into the program, based on the submissions and so on, to help.
Stick up in right before Senator Roberts. Nothing gets done in this country without a bank account.
Right.
Nothing gets done in this country unless you have a bank account.
Right.
So we need a commitment from NETCO to say how you're going to partner with young men from the urban areas, from the rural areas, who need a bank account, who cannot get access, because once they say they're living in Lavantil, once they say they're living in Matlat, on these areas, no bank account.
Yes.
No bank account. We need a commitment from NETCO to say you're going to partner with these people, with these young men, to make sure that these banks open up more access for accounts for these young men and women from these areas. We need that commitment, and we need that now. Things has to change. We cannot continue like this. Yes. Nothing can happen for a businessman in this country without a bank account.
Chair, through you, to the honourable member, I remember I could speak with confidence that we would provide every bit of support for the young people, for all that are interested in being part of the entrepreneurial journey. The idea is already emerging from our chairman and board of directors, where we have the idea of really going out in terms of outreach from the organization. Rather than having individuals come and find us, we must go to them and find them where they are, you know. So we are now constructing an outreach program that will move around Trinidad and Tobago and work with the different stakeholders and take the information to the ground, have our officers look and see where the stress points are, where the pain points are, where the sticking points are, and unstick them, right? And really have a movement through the process and track that in a manner that is highly accountable, so we can really make a difference at the end of the day. So I want to say that we are committed to the process. It is the intent, and we are now setting up the mechanisms, and we are willing to take the best guidance and bring in all the specialists to make sure this takes place.
If I could just, very quickly touch on the issue of collateral.
Sure.
Has the board of directors and maybe your banking and finance experts on the team, has any consideration been given to the legality or the practicality of maybe laxing the collateral requirements? I know you have to manage risk as well, but has anyone taken a look at whether or not those requirements can be laxed a little bit?
What I can say is this. On the entry of the board of directors and subsequent to my intervention in the organization, what we found, we found there was a dramatic shift in the way the loan portfolio was being administered at NETCO. And that shift, well, the information over the last couple of years is there has been an ultra concentration of loans into vehicle purchases. So it already spoke to maxi taxis and cars and so on. And when you looked at it, on the face of it, it meant that a lot of sectors overall would have been disadvantaged for whatever the purpose and the intent was. So maybe it was that they were targets, and I don't know what the agenda was. I can't speak to that agenda. What I could say is that the loans were significantly geared to vehicle purchases, and when we look at our mandate, the board and the current management is saying that we need to ensure that there is really cross-sectoral attention, and we need to take a broad-based approach into treating with the loan portfolio.
Your observation is an indictment of our loan institutions, bank and otherwise. That yes, okay, these disadvantaged, dispossessed people in these communities, buy a car, pay through your nose for that. But to buy property, to get involved in a business, to really give them a meaningful way out of poverty, no. And that's what I'm talking about. This is what we need to address very, very quickly.
Yes. So to the honourable members' question specifically, everything is under review, and what can be done to ensure that there's greater access to opportunity, given the practical circumstances. I am confident that the board of directors and the management will take all actions to ensure that there is access, there is engagement, and there is realization. And I think fundamentally, the philosophy needs to be there. I am saying that I can speak with confidence that philosophy is there, and we now put in all mechanisms in place to drive that agenda.
Chair, the member Roberts-Radgman asked a question earlier that ties in to what the new CEO is sharing with us. And this concern about accessibility, lack of collateral, and whether there are provisions to bypass that system or overlook that system. And my question now comes to you because as a representative who actively represent my constituents, I have had cause to help constituents with applications that were somehow never successful. My question is, what extent does a political recommendation play in these loans? Because I am aware of other MPs when I was in opposition organizing people to get loans. So my question is do you have that record in terms of people who may have defaulted on the loan, and how did they manage to bypass that system? Is it that kind of political interference that goes in a whole different direction and, to allow for those loans to be given without collateral and without really a concern about it going back into the sector that it is supposed to go towards building that small business? Do you have access to those type of records? Because I know you are newly installed.
Chair, through you to the honourable member, what I can say is this. I think there is a clear need for review and audit into the loan portfolio. But what we could more strongly speak to in terms of information at this point, there was an internal audit of the MSB grant, the Micro and Small Business Grant. And in that audit, there were a number of red flags raised in terms of the administration of the program. And, it has been cause for concern. And the management, and there's also the BAP program, and there was audit there in terms of many questions were raised in terms of the administration, in terms of the evaluation, how the evaluations were done, and inconsistencies in a number of areas. So we are taking this on board to ensure that there's integrity, strengthening integrity, and accountability as we build out our programs going forward, so it could stand scrutiny and, of course, close the gaps that have been identified previously in these internal audits.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think we can move on from NETCO and pose questions to the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. Dr. Dowlath, you had a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. To the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. In your submissions, you would have identified challenges which included strengthening competency-based training and collaboration with industry in curriculum development. How is the ministry strengthening competency-based training to better align skills development with labor market demands? Now, we've heard that we don't have a lot of data from the Ministry of Labor in terms of those. So how is the Ministry of Tertiary Education moving forward with, aligning its curriculum? What are you aligning with? What data, what baseline information do you have that you're aligning with? And also, too, you have all of these agencies under the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. What is the level of coordination to ensure that there's uniformity in terms of ensuring that these policies are implemented in all of your agencies?
Madam Chair, through you. Okay, member, to answer the first question with regard to the data and so forth. Well, according to the Gazette and our responsibilities, we do not actually directly collect the data. So we do work with Ministry of Labor and other agencies concerning utilizing their available data to inform our policies and programs. At the ministry, we have an oversight role, so we work a lot with the relevant agencies within our purview. We provide the policy direction and the strategic guidance and so forth, and we also monitor and liaise and collaborate with the agencies. So we depend also on the agencies and the data that they have and collect to inform our policies and programs. With regard to the second question concerning the monitoring, as I said, there are a number of agencies within the purview of MTES. There are monitoring mechanisms. The relevant agencies do have to report via the SEPM, that's the Statutory Enterprise Monitoring Manual. There are a variety of different reports and compliance reports, financial information that the relevant agencies do have to provide to the ministry on a regular basis. I would ask the Director of Research Planning and Technical Services Division, Ms. Valadere, to delve a little bit more in responding to the second question concerning the monitoring of the agencies.
Chair, through you, in answer to the question, there's an exhaustive list of reports that are required under the SEPM, but also to answer the member's question about the coordination between the agencies, there is constant communication at all levels between the ministry and the institutions, and there is a drive that they have been informed of to harmonize the delivery of the tertiary and skills training. So all the institutions are encouraged to work together, and they do, to remove any gaps and address any, to identify gaps, to address gaps and remove any overlaps between what they are offering.
If I may, can you provide any example of how recent data has informed policy decisions? Can you give a concrete example of, you said there's an exhaustive list of reports and constant communication.
The reports are more for governance of the institutions, so they would be required to submit their audited financials and those sorts of reports. But in terms of the feedback for alignment, it's at the institution level. The institutions get feedback on their offerings, and that the institutions have almost a mandate to be responsive and to adapt as they go along to ensure that their offerings are relevant, so that responsiveness to be relevant at all times. So there's that communication between the ministry and the institutions and the markets that they serve.
Isn't there also a responsibility of the ministry in terms of their offerings and guiding the training institutions at a policy level?
Madam Chair, yes, there is MTES. We do have a responsibility to constantly liaise and collaborate and partner with the agencies concerning their offerings. But there are various feedback mechanisms. We depend on the agencies as well to partner with their relevant stakeholders. So there's open communication between the ministry and the agencies, and then also with the stakeholders, so that we would be able to get the relevant information concerning, take for example, the number of enrollments, the number of graduates, and so forth. So at different levels of the system, we get the information in terms of the program offerings, and then more importantly, the agencies, depending on the successful rates of graduation and completion and so forth, they would tailor their programs to suit, especially with feedback, constant feedback from the different stakeholders that they serve. Sir?
Madam Chair, can I add some clarity to this? The National Training Agency has something called sector advisory bodies. And these sector advisory bodies belong to different sectors like energy, agriculture, creative industries, maritime, cosmetology, manufacturing, construction, water and wastewater, tourism, a number of sector advisory bodies. These sector advisory bodies are made up of individuals in industry who help develop national occupational standards which develop the curriculum for the training providers. But also, very importantly, the sector advisory bodies have individuals who can determine emerging trends in industry. So they can guide you as to what are the emerging trends in each one of these industries. So the sector advisory bodies provide that kind of data. Out of that, we build something called National Occupational Standards, which are on our website, and I think we have 175? 175 National Occupational Standards on our website, which are free to be used by all training providers. And we work in collaboration with national training agencies throughout the region, and we share occupational standards. And so the occupational standards allow the training providers to provide the kind of training that is required by industry. And the training will be updated every 2 or 3 years. The sector advisory bodies meet and they determine what are the changing trends in industry and what are the skills, attitudes, and everything that is needed for the emerging jobs in this new industry.
Thank you, Mr. Supasad. That does give some context. So you've mentioned the skills that are required, but and certification is the mandate of the National Training Agency. But there's also something called prior learning assessment and recognition for people who have experience without certification. And we also know that there are lots of people who have certification without training. How can you enlighten us more about eligibility of the youth for participating in these initiatives?
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Prior learning assessment and recognition is a system used by the National Training Agency and other providers to assess individuals who have particular skills but have had no ability to get a certificate. So these young trainees, or it could be of any age, they develop a portfolio and they are assessed by the NTA using technical experts in the particular fields. So if you are a plumber, we will get a plumber with certification and who is an experienced plumber, and they will verify that the person can do the things that are required according to the National Occupational Standards. So the NTA has a system of walk-in persons who can come and be assessed. In addition to that, we have something called workforce assessment centers. YTEP is one of such workforce assessment center. MIC is a workforce assessment center, NESC. And these workforce assessment centers can identify people with skills but no certificates. And they go through the process, which could be a little difficult for some people because you have to develop a portfolio. And it requires persons to observe what they are doing. You could either do it online or they physically observe what they're doing. And we get people called external verifiers who come to verify what they do. So it takes a little while, but it is done. There's a cost attached to it, of course. And until such time as we could get the state to fund a prior learning assessment for people without certificates, it will not have the kind of numbers that we would like. We are working with some agencies some organizations to do. We are in partnership and discussions with the Tobago House of Assembly to do prior learning assessment and recognition for their workers in their industry. We have had meetings with the Chaguanas Regional Corporation to do the same thing, and we have made overtures to other corporations to do prior learning assessment for them. We have the challenge, though, that we have 30 vacancies in the system, and we don't have the funding in NTA to fund all of this.
Thank you. Could you give us an idea of how much the assessment costs?
It's $3,500. $3,500 for level 1, and when you go to level 2, we use a classification system, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so the CVQ, the Caribbean Vocational Qualification, has levels. The TTNVQ, Trinidad and Tobago National Vocational Qualification, has levels. So somebody like Whitep will deliver a national vocational qualification at level 1 for patient care assistant, for example. And then they will go to some Whitep will deliver some level 2 as well, some level 2. And then if they have to go to a level 3, they will have to go to NESC or MIC. And the level 2 course annual is $5,000? $5,000 for a level 2 qualification.
Yeah, so that is quite sizable. And given that there are many potential employees out there who have qualifications without certification, I don't know if there's some way to make it easier for them to get this certification to make them more employable.
Yes,
funding mechanisms.
Yeah, we have been looking at it. It is because we have to pay persons from industry to leave their job, or retired persons to come and do the assessment for us. And that is where some of the cost is involved. And until such time as we could come up with a way of getting funding for that, the cost will still have to be $3,500 per person at level 1 and $5,000 at level 2. But we have been looking at that.
Member Nakhid, you had a question?
I love the information, sir. But in the end, if there's no certification, how are they going to get employment? So whether we pay $2,000 or $5,000, in the end, it's going to be the cost effective as a government, as an economy, as a nation, to pay that money. We need these people certified in the end, don't you?
Yeah, we're speaking from the same hymn book, you know.
Yeah.
So we need the funding for it, and that's why we are partnering with some of the organizations who seem to have money to start to do work with them. And it is a slow process, and we will get to everybody else. Our board was just instituted in September last year, and so we have been reviewing some of that and trying to get some of it done.
Again, we understand completely. Mr. Ameen explained to me a lot of these boards are new, and I know you're going to take time. I love the policy directive that the gentleman there also spoke about. So I know it's going to be time, but you know the public. There's never enough time, and there's no time, you know.
Yeah, there's a saying, while the grass is growing, the horse is starving. So we really need to get our skates on and feed those horses, right? Did anybody else have a question?
Yes. Chair, we're hearing a lot about training for young people. We have heard about the on-the-job training and other programs like that in the skills-based area, competency-based areas. The Ministry of Labor, in their submissions, would have indicated that employers would have identified gaps in soft skills, things like communication, professionalism, punctuality, teamwork, problem-solving, adaptability, and general workplace conduct. And that's another barrier, so that you may be well certified, you have your academics, but these soft skills are the ones that increase your potential not to be employed, because employers are looking for persons who can work in teams, who can collaborate, who can communicate, who can adapt, and who can innovate. And in this era of AI and technology, I want to understand from the Ministry of Tertiary Education and all of its subsidiary organizations, how are we treating with this kind of soft skill set that is essential for efficacy on a job, at all levels? And this is an open question.
Madam Chair, through you, yes, I acknowledge that it's an open question, simply too also because the actual training is not within the direct remit of the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. So I'm going to leave it open to the relevant agencies who undertake different types of training to respond, please.
Madam Chairman, through you, honorable members, at YTEP Limited, we have recognized the need for soft skills because we engage with employers, we engage with the business association, and it has been flagged to us, even in our studies, that in some cases they value the right attitude, behavior, work ethic more than the skill itself. So you could train skill, but if somebody comes with a bad attitude, it's not something they can tolerate. So very core to our vocational skills training is life skills training, where we treat with that teamwork, self-esteem, getting to know yourself, getting to build confidence, communication skills. So it's very integral in our program offering, and it's mandatory that each trainee that enters into our program is exposed to life skills, so that the life skills is coupled with the vocational skills, so we have a more holistic young person coming out job ready and more easily accepted in the labor market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But is it common with all of the other organizations, MIC and the others? And I suppose OJT will also respond.
To you, Chair, honorable member, MIC, similar to YTEP, we, in all our programs, embedded is a core component with respect to life skills. We really pay a lot of emphasis on what the employers say, because we have a strong partnership with the industry. And just as YTEP, they come back to us and say, listen, you need to ensure those guys are better ready for us. Because we acknowledge that there are a lot of challenges. But not only in the life skills element we support, we assist them because life skills is as a result of behavioral issues and competency. So we focus a lot on practical by way of understanding the theory and also getting, in addition to the theory, getting your hands dirty. So our emphasis is on that regard. But in addition to that, we offer a lot of stuff with regards to digital literacy. Because in the age of technology, all and sundry, they need to understand that. We have modules including entrepreneurship. So you understand what the opportunities of NEDCO would look like. We train you in health and safety, because the general philosophy is, whatever happened. I just here to make a day work. But that's the kind of mindset we try to inculcate, a person who's better ready for the work. So our curriculum is really developed and designed to ensure that we have a well-rounded student for the world of work. And in addition to that, of course, there's the element of guidance and counseling, whereby persons may have, life skills may not have helped to such an extent because what they are going through, they need additional assistance. So our guidance and counseling program is a very strong and robust program that we would render that level of support. So again, we can help you through whatever you're going through to be better prepared. So this is MIC submission.
Ms. David, you wanted to contribute?
Yes, Chair, thanks again. From the OJT perspective, again, because of the lack of data locally, that is, you would see that both the ILO and the UNDP talk about the importance of soft skills in order for sustainable employment. And therefore, in 2022, the OJT would have done its own internal skills assessment with our training providers. And one of the things that we would have pulled out from that is at least the 5 to 10 key areas of soft skills that the employer spoke about, which is exactly what we're talking about, because that would have been the willingness to learn, the communication, teamwork, time management, ethics, adaptability, and innovation. So those were some of the key areas coming out of the 2022 survey. So what we did internally is that we would have manipulated our modules of our orientation to be able to deal with that. Now, because of COVID, we went into a place where we did not have the trainees physically, and we were doing the online training. We still currently do the online training, but there is discussion to go back to that place where we have the trainees physically in a space where we can do that orientation and ensure that that type of information is shared with them for the soft skills development. Because of the framework that we operate with right now, we also have to impart some of that information through our online webinars, and that is what we do when they are on the program for the 24 months, to ensure that we at least give that component of them to them in terms of the information, what employers looking for while you develop and you get the practical, technical training. But in order for you to be able to transition to employment and get that job, you need to develop your soft skills. We have also implemented a mentorship. We are now in a pilot phase whereby there are mentors in the workplace. So that helps to guide them along and provide that level of guidance for the soft skills development. Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Thank you. I'd just like to stay with the OJT program. Your submission indicated that the top 5 sectors for engagement with the youth are education, human health and social work, administrative and support services, water, sewage, waste management, and professional, scientific, and technical energy. What insights have you gathered from employers regarding why these sectors attract the highest engagement, especially given that the soft skills are so essential in education and social services and social work?
Thanks for the question, Madam Chair. One of the things, it's a demand and supply. And most of these areas would be in the public sector. And the demand in the public sector is where you would get the, because the highest level of our trainees currently, we have 4,108 trainees on the program currently. And the biggest areas in terms of the highest percentage of intake is the health sector and the education sector. It is in the public service. But in terms of the insight going down to the professional and the scientific areas, we have been able, in terms of looking at the skills matching, in terms of the graduates, to be able to onboard some of those companies, both private and public, in the energy sector, to be able to make a better match for the graduates, to be able to be aligned to that, their sectors.
Thank you. That's very interesting because you're saying most of it is in the public sector and we're talking about the lack of soft skills. So I think that could probably explain some of the experiences people have when they interact with the public sector. And maybe that's something that you could spend more time on developing the soft skills in this age group.
And I can say because of the nature of the engagement in the public sector, you find that we can't or we don't get that level of mentorship. So therefore, that in itself poses some problems in the public sector. But we do give them the opportunity for the webinars during their 24 months to be able to come onto the platform and get that level of information. But soft skills is something that will have to be practiced. So therefore, the actual practical part of it, yes, we can do it on the webinar, but not until the providers, the people who supervise in the trainees, and there's this increased willingness to mentor the trainees into making sure the soft skills is developed, then we will get there, but it's a work in progress.
So do the trainees have to have some sort of assessment? They have to pass or to be certified? Or, I mean, is it not something that could be compulsory that they attend these webinars and develop their soft skills?
Well, we are now in conversation with the Ministry of Tertiary, seeing that we have all of these other agencies now under the Ministry of Tertiary who actually deliver that type of training, so that there probably could be that component. Now we were under Ministry of Labor prior to October 2025.
And my final question before I give way, what measures are in place to encourage increased participation from private sector employers?
Private sector employees,
yeah.
Madam Chair, if I can be open and frank, don't like bottleneck. So it is about us fixing the system of engagement. We are in the process of reviewing our onboarding, how they come onto the program, by looking at some of the issues we had and the challenges we had, and now developing a framework whereby there is, one, strict compliance, because to come onto the program, private sector, and get government money in terms of the 60% that government provides, it is important that we make sure that those providers that are coming on, the new ones, are compliant, both regulatory and HSC especially, because we have had some issues, so we're looking at that. But there is a need for the system to be fixed because there are still interests. Currently, we are reviewing probably about 120 interested organizations from the private sector that is looking to come on to the OJT program.
I think we're all old enough here to remember that all these social skills, soft skills we say, social skills, were taught to us by our teachers when we had teachers. I'll get in some trouble for this from tutor, but when we had teachers the like of Minister Dowlath and so in our schools, social skills and these soft skills were taught. And the Manufacturing Association chair also said that that's the biggest problem. Highly qualified people coming in, no soft skills. And if we're looking for solutions, why not then include modules, as the gentleman stated, Sandra, into the tertiary education system? If we're coming out of high school and coming into that third level education, why don't we have modules to facilitate these soft skills that they are missing? That's a solution, isn't it? It's open.
Madam Chair, just to add to the discussion concerning the soft skills, and we're hearing a lot of discussion about it. Director of Operations at YTEP. YTEP actually has a solution that we have developed, and I'd just like to share that with the audience. Based on our stakeholder engagement, employers were saying, on one hand, persons are coming in qualified, they can do the technical skills, but the soft skills is lacking. And the feedback we got from them was, can YTEP develop and deliver what is called a professional development program that would act as a prerequisite to them actually being onboarded for recruitment. So through the curriculum department, we've actually developed an outline of such a program which can be implanted in several agencies, as well as employers can use it for their recruitment efforts. This is actually broken up into 8 modules, and it's a combination of life skills as well as certain competencies which are required at the entry level and even at some middle management and senior levels that persons may be lacking, but it's more so at the entry level. The first module being career development and personal effectiveness, and that really looks at time management, financial planning, career pathing, health and wellness, and so forth. Then 2, very crucial, emotional intelligence and professional etiquette. 3, it also includes effective workplace communication, and we hear that challenge in terms of the public service and even the private sector, where there's that challenge with persons, how they communicate one with the other. The 4th module looks at the introduction to the work environment, the do's and don'ts, and those health and safety practices, and it also speaks to introduction to ethics and professionalism. Importantly, in Module 5, with the advent of artificial intelligence, we have also included that as a crucial component where there are several AI tools that can be taught to persons so that they're more effective when they enter the workplace. Module 6 treats with project management fundamentals. Sometimes persons have, they have to manage small teams and projects, but they don't have those skills. It's also included there. The 7th of 8 module would be in terms of technical and report writing. Again, persons may have the technical skills, but when they have to produce a report, if it's on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, they don't know how to do that. And WITEP proposes that that could be included as a component as well. And finally, Module 8 treats with customer service and professional interaction. It's meant to be a blended approach, and certainly this is something that can work throughout several agencies. We have to collaborate. It doesn't make sense that we beat our heads against a wall and we duplicate efforts. WITEP has developed an outline which can help support that, and we are willing to share that with the other agencies.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stevenson. That's very comprehensive, and I think certainly all the training agencies will probably try to communicate with you so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel, and we can incorporate those modules which sound like it's something that we need. Okay, everyone, it's now 12:30, and we have not been able, there are a host of questions that we still have to ask, and we also have questions from the public that came in that we were unable to ask. So we do need to end this particular hearing, but I hope that you would facilitate us if we do invite you back for another hearing so that we can continue this very interesting conversation because we still have so many questions to ask. So I would like to bring the hearing to an end, but I'd invite, please, closing remarks from the entities present, starting with the Ministry of Labour.
Thank you, Chair and members. The Ministry of Labour, Small and Micro Enterprise Development appreciates the opportunity to be here this morning before this inquiry. We have noted the concerns and suggestions put forward to the Ministry of Labour, Small and Enterprise Development in treating with certain issues, and we will await the outcome of the inquiry.
Thank you. The Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training.
Madam Chair, through you, the Ministry is grateful for being invited to this inquiry. We too take on board some of the questions. We noted too also the strong need for correlation in terms of data to ensure that our policies and programs are evidence-based. Additionally too, I hear and I take on board some of the recommendations, certainly too from WITEP. So as I said, we normally collaborate and partner, so we will continue to do that. Additionally too, with regard to OJT, as Ms. David indicated, OJT has been reassigned to MTES as of October, so we are aware that there are certain gaps and areas that we need to work on and close and improve. Lastly, we look forward to being invited once again so that we could adequately address the relevant questions and concerns. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Ms. David, did you want to add anything on behalf of the OJT program?
Not particular, Chair, but I'm thankful for the opportunity. The OJT program is a national program. One of the things we would have defined using our interaction with the ILO, that there's a difference between the apprenticeship model and the traineeship model. And therefore, we will be working with the Ministry of Tertiary Education and all of its agencies to collaborate and bring a better framework towards impacting the national community and that young people between the ages of 16 to 35.
Thank you. The National Entrepreneurship Development Company, NEDCO.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members, the panel, I thank you for the opportunity through NEDCO. And I must add that we are in the middle of our strat plan, so we are working. And when we are called again, we will be here with better information to answer the questions. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. National Training Agency.
Chair, thanks very much. In relation to your objective number 1, to identify the key factors and conditions contributing to youth unemployment and underemployment in Trinidad and Tobago, I would like to share a thought that training does not create employment. There is perhaps an idea by many people that once you are trained, you could get a job. Two different situations, two different scenarios. Training means that somebody will have the skills and talents to get a job when the opportunity arises. Employment itself is created by broader economic policy, industrial strategy, employer participation, and general improved economic activities, which is often reflected in a greater demand for skills and services. So that employment creation for young people and all people in the country is dependent on economic activity. So the economy has been, has not been able to create jobs that where persons emanated out of training programs as graduates and could not get jobs. And so if the economy improves, then trainees will get placement from all the training providers. So we can't equate training with employment opportunities, but employment opportunities depend on a myriad of other factors which training providers have no control over. So that is to be noted. And finally, the NTA is willing to assist the national economy, and more funding and legislation or cabinet directive will assist us in providing greater policing of the TVET system in Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you.
Thank you so much for that insight. And MIC Institute of Technology.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity for to answer a few questions about what's happening at MIC. And just like Chairman Supersad mentioned, the role of MIC is really to assist to a great extent with the economic diversification mandate of the GRTT, particularly in areas that we are focused on, in the areas of manufacturing, hospitality, and construction. So similarly, we, once the additional funding will come to the MICIT, we would work towards, training up suitable persons for these sectors, and thereby the work of this committee, which is to reduce unemployment and certainly underemployment, we would see some positive traction in that regard. So we thank you again, and we look forward for another opportunity to have a follow-up conversation.
Thank you. And finally, Youth Training and Employment Partnership Program, YTEP.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members. I would close by stating, or sharing rather, a story of a young man walking into our training center, frustrated, indicating it's either a gun or a torch. And we gave him the torch to train him as a welder. We are hope, transformation, second chances to youth who are at risk and who are actually looking for opportunities to be skilled and employed. And it's on that basis that we value this Honorable Joint Select Committee that is speaking to youth unemployment and underemployment. And we're very eager to share information with the committee, with the country, understanding the role and function that YTEP Limited plays on the landscape of technical vocational education and training, and more importantly, on the lives of young people and retrenched and displaced workers. So we look forward to participating in your inquiry at a date and time to be announced. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's an excellent note to end on. So I would like to thank the officials of the various organizations for your attendance and your contributions today. And for the committee members, I thank you for your support and participation. And of course, the staff of the Office of the Parliament for your procedural and logistical support, without whom this probably would be impossible to pull off. So before we adjourn, permit me to appeal to all young people. This inquiry is about you. So please let your voices be heard. We want to hear from you. Young people, you can contribute to this important inquiry by sending your comments to our email address, which is jscsspa@ttparliament.org, and by taking part in a very important short pulse survey, which will be posted on our Instagram and Facebook page in the coming days. Simply search for TT Parl committees. With that important announcement, I now declare that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.